So today I want to talk to you guys about something that is really near and dear to my heart because of my own experience after getting pregnant and having babies and training and wanting to develop my strength back and feel good again within my own body. Now I had a real hard time doing this, and because of that, I want to go over why after you've had a baby it's so important to choose your programming wisely. And this goes for anything. If you're going to go and try and take a class because you want that social aspect, if you want to get back to what you used to do, if you did CrossFit or if you were a runner, or if you want to play sports because that is something that keeps you a part of the community and you really, really love. There are some things that I just want to make you aware of, because when we jump into programming that we're not necessarily ready for, like I did, I went and worked with a trainer after my first pregnancy, and we're not necessarily ready for that kind of training yet. A lot of stuff can happen. So this will make, the low back pain that you might have developed over pregnancy potentially a lot worse. So if you're still experiencing low back pain, or you feel like you're 80 when you're trying to get out of bed, knee pain, if you still feel kind of pregnant because of mummy tummy, so maybe some split abs, or because your TVA, so that corset that kind of goes around our waist here, there's a muscle, it's called the transverse abdominis. If that's not functioning properly, that can contribute to a lot of different pains and aches and pains, but also incontinence. So your whole inner core, so this inner unit, right? Your diaphragm's up here on the top, that TVA, so the corset comes around the middle. And then you have your pelvic floor on the bottom. And the way that it should work is kind of like a piston. When you breathe in, it comes down, pelvic floor lets go. And when you breathe out, the diaphragm comes up and the pelvic floor contracts. And this is sort of what keeps us stable. This is what is the main shock absorber for the body. And it also keeps you from pain when you sneeze and you laugh, and or if you go to, play a sport or something and you want to just lunge in a certain direction or be active in that sense, and you're finding that you're peeing all the time. The reasons for this can be that we jumped into some activity before being ready to do that, right? So today I want to take an opportunity to just teach you, make you a little bit more aware of why some of these things happen and how it can be connected to the activity that we choose to do, right? So it'll give you a bit of an idea, even if you're not recently postpartum, exactly how to approach your training so that you know maybe what's going on and how you can fix some things, okay? So I want you to think about after you've had your baby, okay? Actually, let's go right back to before you were even pregnant. Let's start there so I can sort of show you the trajectory of what often happens, okay? And this is, again, it's not everybody, but I've done, over 100 assessments on pre and postnatal women, and these are just a lot of the things that come up quite often, okay? So before pregnancy, a lot of us sit a lot now. We drive everywhere. We're not as active as, several generations before us. And what happens is there becomes this sort of disconnect from the core, because we're sitting in chairs, so we're able to use sort of thoracic and up and grab things in our shoulders, and everything are very sort of tight and hunched over, and we're very used to doing this, but it disconnects us a little bit from the core, right? And when the core becomes disconnected, it sort of turns off a little bit, the low back has a tendency to turn on. And because we're sitting in the chair and our hips are very tight, the butt has a tendency to turn off as well, okay? So we're coming into pregnancy quite often with a little bit of core amnesia, and our glutes maybe not firing as much as we'd like them to, okay? And then that leads to, the tight hips and the low back pain that people often will feel, and also knee pain and stuff like that too. Why? Because our core, which is supposed to stabilize us, isn't functioning that well, right? And the glutes, which you want to be your primary accelerator, decelerator, and stabilizer of your lower body, aren't functioning that well either. So something else ends up taking over, and that's usually the hips, and then in through the quads and the knees, right? So every time we're loading, we're doing different things, walking upstairs, getting in and out of cars, picking up kids, we're loading from our knees as opposed to through our hips and our glutes and our core, okay? So we're coming into pregnancy that way. And then we add in hormones that make our joints and our tissues more lax. And a belly, so now we're tilting even more forward, putting more pressure on the low back, tightening more through the hips, and the belly is coming out. And if that corset muscle isn't working the way that we want it to, the belly really has this opportunity to fall forward. The stretch marks really start to happen, and the pain really starts to happen, right? Our body goes way out of whack. The joints just loosen up and just exasperate any problems that we might have had before pregnancy. And suddenly all these aches and pains become a real reality, right? And then what happens is we have baby in whichever manner it works out, right? That could be a natural birth, it could be a C-section, it could be, helped in some way medically. There's many different things that happen while baby is coming out of mommy, right? And so that can lead to certain issues too, right? If you had a very difficult labor and perhaps they gave you hormones to speed up labor, this happened to me during one of my labors. Just imagine if baby's trying to come down, right, and not quite ready yet, but they give you hormones to push baby out. Your pelvic floor is it's not ready. It's not there yet. But they're giving baby hormones and baby's getting pushed, trying to get through the pelvic floor. And then, it comes out, but we wonder afterwards, well, why do we have incontinence and stuff like that? That is one of the reasons that can really be a huge contributor to that, right? Because baby's trying to push through and pelvic floor is just not ready yet, okay? So one of the reasons why incontinence can be a big deal. Also, if you've had a C-section, you're cutting through your fascia here, right? So that can really give you a lot of issues if you have numbness around your scar, or there's no rehab that happens after that, right? You go in for knee surgery or hip surgery or something, you are given rehab to help you to, build that stuff back and begin to activate that stuff properly again. And that just doesn't happen after C-sections, at least here in some parts of the world it does. So if you went into pregnancy slightly, not connecting to your core, you're already out like this, you already got some pain, you maybe have a C-section or something which really kind of turns this up. Just think about all of the stuff that can happen and can go wrong, right? Or cause you different issues, the low back pain, the incontinence, the pain even during sex because your pelvic floor isn't working properly, all of these different things, okay? And then if you go in now and start training in the wrong way. And this can just be even starting to run, because most people will do that. We feel the most confident just running. There's no, learning curve and what weights do I lift and stuff like that. But just think about when your, pelvic floor, after birth, especially if you're breastfeeding, there's still all of these hormones that make you very lax. And your core is supposed to be what stabilizes you, the main shock absorber, but maybe it's not functioning at the highest level you want it to, and you're running. Right, so again, that pushing down on your pelvic floor because you don't have the stabilization, and you're just hitting it repeatedly for however long you're running for, right? And then we have the incontinence, we have the pelvic floor pain and different issues that become associated with that, low back pain and knee pain, right? Just from the running. And that's not what we want to be running for. We want to run because we want our strength back, we want to feel good, we want to tone up. But these are some of the things that can happen if we don't actually really focus on that inner unit and recover it the way that it's supposed to, okay? So I'll tell you what I did after my first pregnancy and what happened to me. Actually, in fact, I'll show you. So I was training with a coach who I adore and love, but, sorry, a little bit of coffee here. When you train improperly, so without knowing the effects of pregnancy and what can happen postpartum, I'll show you what happens. So I began training, and the very first thing that I did, because I was rebuilding my body, was VMO split squats. So that's to try and build up this muscle right here, right? Because our knees have a tendency to get weak. And when we have this knee pain that I was talking about, because everything else isn't turned on, a lot of trainers will take you through and go, oh, well, let's strengthen your knees. But let's look at what this would look like immediately after having a baby and just going into this training. So a VMO split squat looks something like this, where we're here, we come down into a split squat as far forward as you can go and try and build this knee. Now just imagine if my pelvic floor and my pubic bones and my abs here and the tissues all here are lax because of the hormone relaxin. And I'm coming into this place and lifting heavy weights, okay? Everything has the opportunity to split
apart, which is exactly what happened. It gave me a huge diastasis recti in my lower abs. My pubic bone split. And I still, to this day, even doing this movement, it hurts my pubic bone. Okay, so that's the symphysis there, and that can have a diastasis as well. So a splitting. Okay, and I did this repeatedly under load. Okay, and for a lot of the beginning of that, and then I would do overhead presses with really heavy weights too. So just imagine when you've got all of this stuff going on, a really vulnerable core, essentially, in pelvic floor, and you're lifting 70 pounds over your head. All of that pressure gets pushed here, right? And then you wonder why you pee when you sneeze. Everything is not working properly down there. So if you're going to come back from, your pregnancy and do things like CrossFit right away, or running or playing sports right away without being super cognizant of what's going on down here, you can cause yourself some real problems, to the point where I still, even though I've been rehabbing for about a year now, and I've improved the mummy tummy. So when you get split abs, like, you can still see it a little bit, right? There's a split here. Here's pretty tight, but it took me a long time to be able to pull this back together, because there was a split there. And when the abs are split like that, it still looks like you're a little bit pregnant, right? So, and a lot of moms have those issues. So when you're coming back, just being very aware of, well, what's going on there and what can potentially happen before you jump into some of these activities. And it's not that you can't do these activities, of course you can, but it's just making sure that your body is prepped and ready for it. So immediately postpartum, not necessarily a great idea to start doing these things and having heavy loads when your tissues are so vulnerable. Okay, so just to give you the background in what can happen. And the thing is that once you've gone through this rehab and you feel super comfortable, and it doesn't have to take very long, it just has to be done properly, and there's multiple people who can do that for you, then you can start to do the stuff that you love again. And you won't be feeling, like you're peeing all the time when you go to play your sports, or, the low back pain when you get out of bed, or just playing with your kids. You'll feel more confident in all of these areas because you've properly reconnected to your core again, which it might be years for many people. I've been in the fitness industry for 12 years now, and I didn't even realize what a disconnect, right? Because we look at, our abs and stuff, and we go, oh, we've got some abs, we must be activating our core properly. But I'm talking about the inner unit inside, to make sure that that is working for you properly, so you're stabilizing properly, okay? Because I would go and I would do deadlifts, and I'd be like, why can't I lift this weight? I'm so used to being able to lift this amount of weight. And I'm like, I don't feel like my glutes are working or firing properly. And my low back was taking everything. And I was like, where's my core? And I had no idea how to reconnect to this, right? And most people in most programs and stuff, sadly, although it's becoming much more popular, there's a lot of great movements coming, don't know how to help moms reconnect in that way so that you can do the stuff that you love with confidence, okay? So in this, of course, is not just recently postpartum. If you had kids and it's been years, but you're still experiencing all this stuff, it still would really benefit you to start to go through some of this training. And there are some, great physiotherapists that can help you with this, pelvic floor therapists that can help you with this. There's a lot of great yoga instructors who are very, very well in tune if this is their specialty. And of course, certain personal trainers and coaches and stuff who really take an interest in this and want to help you out with it. So just look around. Now that you're aware of some of the things that can happen, pick a program that is going to work best for you in the stage that you are at. And if you are sure that your core is connecting, your glutes are firing properly. If you're doing a squat and you don't feel your glutes, they're not connected properly. And the reason most of the time that happens is because your core is not actually activating properly, okay? So this is not to say, oh my gosh, you've done such a bad job. Me being in the industry, working in this industry for this long, I still didn't have this awareness until, I started to coach it and become certified and get into it a lot in the last year, because I had all of these issues and none of the mainstream stuff was actually working for me, okay? So just being aware, I think, is the biggest thing when you're trying to choose a program. What are the things that make things worse, and what are the things that make things better, okay? So all of that to say, please do choose your programs properly. If you know that you're already advanced, go ahead and do what you need to. But if you've had some issues or you think that you do have some issues, get it checked out. That's just the easiest way to do it. We are certainly needing different kinds of training after we have had babies. And it's really important and vital for you to know that so that you feel amazing quicker, as opposed to just maybe making some problems that are already existing worse or creating some new problems in your body. So I hope that that was very, very helpful today. If you have any questions, please do hit me up. I'm always here for you and always wanting to help moms not only feel better in their bodies, but be able to build their strength and build their body back properly. So that's it for me today. Hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.